This is one of those few weapons that, even now, all the way in year 3, I still shiver whenever I use this weapon. Listen, there is not too many guns that just made me break out into an all-out rage like this one. And that is, of course, Uriel's gift. Fellas, it has returned to us as a roll drop here in Season of Dawn. Kind of a direct method to getting this weapon is just to go pick up those legendary Ingrams from Raul. But I will say, guys, be prepared to burn some shards, because good rolls on this weapon does not drop often. Now today, guys, we're going to be talking about how Uriel's gift is doing in both PvP and in PvE, what rolls you should be looking for, and if this 450 round per minute auto rifle is as dominant as it once was. Now this weapon is present in that precision archetype. Its base default recoil direction though, guys, even though it says it's vertical, still does kick to the left, sitting at 71 recoil direction. If you happen to throw on a simple counterbalance mod, it does level the weapon out, making things a little more vertical. Now the rolls that I have in mind are actually pretty decent. I got one here with the Torch HS3 sight. It actually gives us a boost to zoom as well as range, and again, zoom plays a major role there in damage fall off, high caliber rounds, quick draw, and kill clip. Now quick draw on an auto rifle, a little funky. Was it needed? Not really. There's always the debate about quick draw on certain primary weapons, as that big boost to handling speed when you're going around corners, to have the weapon almost instantly ready, say when you're coming out of a slide or something, yes, does add a level of convenience. I think some of the weapons that really benefit from something like quick draw being present on it in terms of primary weapons, to me, is something like Sacred Providence. Now I know that's kind of like apples to bananas there in terms of comparison, as Sacred Providence is a pulse rifle, but it does greatly benefit from something like quick draw because the handling speed on that pulse rifle is pretty slow. So just to answer your question on whether or not quick draw is necessary on a primary weapon, if it's got super slow handling, then I would say absolutely. In terms of Uriel's gift though, Uriel's actually already has pretty good base handling, and I think the only time you would really want something like quick draw on Uriel's is if you happen to be rocking maybe a scope or something that greatly diminishes our handling. So don't rule out something like quick draw. Again, it seems like a perk that's more popular on our special weapons, but it definitely benefits us here on our primaries, especially our slow handling ones. Now my next roll, this one was my more consistent roll, especially in that mid to long range. I like to use this roll on maps like Widow's Court, where things really start to spread out. It comes with a Signal MS5 sight or scope, which greatly boosts range as well as zoom, ricochet rounds for that bump there in range and stability, dynamic sway reduction, which states when holding down the trigger, the weapon's sway reduction system boosts accuracy over time. Honestly, it's very similar to something like Persistence back in Destiny 1. I know that's essentially what the hidden exotic perk is on Outbreak Perfected. Dynamic sway reduction, though, is always a weird one for me, because whenever I review weapons that have dynamic sway on it, my perception of this trait seems to change depending on the weapon archetype. Like some weapons, I just don't feel like dynamic sway really helps all that much. For something like Uriel's gift, and you can tell from the gameplay right here, I am laying on the trigger with everything in my heart, which is more than likely keeping something like dynamic sway always active. Now the final perk there is Under Pressure, improves stability as well as accuracy as the magazine gets lower. Under Pressure is a top tier perk on many weapons. It's a great perk on fusion rifles especially, and kind of an odd one here on an auto rifle. Now technically speaking, you could prime your weapon all the way down to say the bottom 18 rounds or so and take advantage of something like Under Pressure. And in this situation, dynamic sway reduction somewhat leads into Under Pressure, as you get that boost to accuracy as you're firing, and then as you approach that Under Pressure territory, you get like double the bonus there in accuracy from both of these traits. This is a very consistent combination, which is honestly what resulted in Uriel's gift here being able to hang on these mid-range maps where normally an auto rifle shouldn't be able to hang. But again, the biggest contributing factor to that one is honestly that scope. That scope boosting that range as well as that zoom plays such a big role there in how far this auto rifle can reach. Now those were the two main roles, actually probably the only two roles that really did a good job for me. But let's just talk about Uriel's gift now all on its own. Back in the day, guys, hands down, Uriel's was one of the best weapons in the game. Just about every Trials loadout in year 1 had Uriel's gift involved in some kind of way. And this sandbox, it hits 26 per crit and 18 per body, reaching a 0.93 second time to kill value at 6 crits into body. Yes, it does have a longer time to kill value in comparison to many other weapons, but similar to something like adaptive pulse rifles, it brings a level of consistency and ease of use, allowing it to stay competitive. Now, something else that Uriel's gift actually does that separates itself from other 450s is how far the weapon can actually shoot before running into damage fall off. We're talking somewhere around 37 meters with just our basic torch sight, but that jumps up to 41 meters with our impulse scopes. Granted though, it does increase that zoom significantly, so up close it may be a little more difficult to land your shots. But if you are purely trying to use an auto rifle in all mid-range engagements, you're only talking about a 2 to 3 meter difference between Uriel's gift and its range and a max range Sacred Providence or any other pulse rifle for that matter. I think the only other auto rifle that can hang with Uriel's gift in terms of range is something like Ringing Nail. The rest of our other 450s, Breakneck, Tiger Spike, Braid Tech, all of those are good auto rifles, but they all come with just basic barrel perks, things that just boost the range. At some point, we're gonna really have to sit down and do a ratio between zoom and range. I mean, it's obviously not a 1-to-1, and I'm sure it changes depending on the archetype of weapons we're observing. Just know that zoom on these scopes play a major role in how much they boost the range here on all of our weapons. Which takes us to the God roll portion of this video. What is the best roll for PvP? Hands down, I really did appreciate Quick Draw. It wasn't necessary though. It was a nice perk, but the handling on this weapon is already really good. I would say that Quick Draw is definitely beneficial if you happen to use a scope that greatly diminishes our handling, most notably that impulse scope. Keep that in mind, guys. Quick Draw is not a necessary trait here on this auto rifle, but depending on which scope you choose, you may want to consider it. The other traits I would consider, one that I have not played with yet, is of course firmly planted, as you get that immediate boost to accuracy upon crouching, as well as stability and handling. Combine that with something like moving target or kill clip, all around a perfect combo. Now, Light GG doesn't have dynamic sway reduction here selected. I truly think dynamic worked very well. So much so, I would actually consider something like dynamic sway reduction alongside something like moving target. They do, however, have tap the trigger. And even though I do like tap the trigger, and it's nice, understand you only get the benefits of tap the trigger on the initial trigger pull. I would say this is more of a trait for console users and controller users, even though tap the trigger does play a role for all users, even PC guys, as it works for mouse and keyboard as well. I've just kind of gotten spoiled with tap the trigger here recently, as we know there are certain weapons that can proc something like tap the trigger with each trigger pull, most notably our sidearms. So not saying it's not needed, but it's not necessary either. Similar to something like Quick Draw, it's just not necessary. But after playing with Uriels, I would say moving target, kill clip with either dynamic sway, firmly planted, or Quick Draw is a perfect combination for PvP. And again, when it comes to your scope, I almost feel like you could change it just depending on whatever map you're playing on. Like if you're playing on Widow's Court and you are just dead set and using an auto rifle, throw on one of those bug-eye scopes. It's got some reach. Now looking at PvE, I was actually surprised with the weapon rolls that you can get here, specifically Disruption Break. I jumped up last season and said that Disruption Break was a game changer, and it is, as there is no better trait in the game to use against barrier champions. Ringing Nail is fantastic simply because of that trait. Uriel's gift is in the same scenario here. Disruption Break, you can even combine it with say something like Triple Tap, as most barrier champions, they're just standing still, guys. They're looking right at you. So if you just land crits on them, voila, you're proccing something like Triple Tap alongside something like Disruption Break. It's great. But of course, you can still just go Disruption Break and field prep. And again, armor piercing rounds adds on extra damage as it over penetrates those barriers, specifically against barrier champions. So if you're looking for a well-rounded auto rifle to deal with barrier champions in this sandbox, Uriels is a fantastic option. The downside to it, which is kind of the kicker here, we don't have any anti-barrier mods for auto rifles this season. They're available for bows, scouts, and pulse rifles. So pretty much everything I just said goes straight to the shitter, which kind of sucks, but you know, who knows? Who knows what happens next season? Might have anti-barrier mods for our auto rifles again. I like to just keep one handy. And if you don't have an auto rifle with Disruption Break on you for potential sandboxes down the line, I would recommend you lock one in right now. So fellas, that is Uriel's gift in Season of Dawn. Is it a game changer? Auto rifles in general are just kind of tough to use. We reviewed Arc Logic the other day, and I felt like Arc Logic handled itself pretty well. Uriel's gift is hands down one of the most consistent auto rifles we have in the game. There's a reason why it was so dominant back in year one. I think the biggest thing working against this auto rifle is just mathematically, it has too much stacked against it. It's just not doing enough damage. But by God, if Bungie was to come out tomorrow and say, hey, we're buffing Uriel's gift. Do you know how many people would lose their mind? Uriel's gift was like one of the few weapons that when it got nerfed, no one shed a tear. No one! I'm surprised we didn't make it a holiday. But hands down though, guys, if you're wanting to use an auto rifle at insane ranges, if you want to roll back to year 1, throw some crouch fire in there, and bring back some nightmares to your enemies, Uriel's gift can definitely do that. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.